This is a quick first look at DaVinci Resolve for iPad.
This is a CineD Gear News video, supported by B&H and CVP.
Welcome everybody here from the CineD studio. I'm Nino and this is Jakub. How are you?
I'm great. What's the choice in life?
What's the choice in life, right? Jakub is one of our most prolific writers and he's also the most experienced person when it comes to editing in DaVinci. I think we made a workshop together at Blackmagic Design in the UK a few years ago, Johnny, you and I. And Jakub is actually the only one who made the jump right away to DaVinci. So that's why I asked you to take a look at the new iPad version of DaVinci Resolve. Now, as everybody knows, as you probably know, DaVinci Resolve was announced for the iPad a couple of weeks ago, and they just launched it to the App Store. So now it should be, when you see this, it should be available for everybody. We've been working with the beta version for the last couple of weeks. Jakub specifically has been looking at it a little bit, and this is just the first impressions video. So what's your take on this in general? And what do you think of the fact that it's now available for iPad?
I think it's a good technological achievement, what Blackmagic Design did here. And the advantage is, of course, portability, because iPads are generally compact devices, right? Like smaller than, let's say, MacBooks. So it's nice that you can now edit wherever you are, basically. Saying that, when you see our 12-inch iPad Pro, it's not that much smaller than, let's say, MacBook Air, because I've been editing on this very MacBook Air on the 13-inch, even in the airplane, so it's possible also.
You can actually show, we have a top camera here, we can show the size comparison. I mean, it's pretty close, right? You see, I mean, the screen is almost the same size. And yeah, I mean, there's not such a big difference, I guess.
The thing is, the Resolve now runs even on the iPad Air with the M1. So as long as there is an M1 chip or M2 inside, then you can run the Resolve on it. And I would say the iPad Air, for instance, the 10-inch one, is very portable. It's a bit of a different experience. Like there is most of the stuff as in the full version of Resolve, but it is somewhere else. Like you need to search a bit for it. So it takes a little bit getting used to, but...
Correct me if I'm wrong. Well, first of all, what my impression was when I opened it, and I'm not an expert in DaVinci, I mostly edit in Premiere and Final Cut. But when I looked at it, it felt very much like the desktop version, the way it looks. It didn't feel like there has been a lot of optimization going on for touch operation yet. First thing I tried is pinching into the timeline. Actually, we can, oops. Oh, so it just crashed. That's a, beta version, so that's fine. But actually, it's been quite stable, to be honest, right? I mean, I didn't have many crashes.
Otherwise, it was fairly stable, yeah.
But let's actually, we have to open your project again, I guess. What I wanted to say is that when you open a project and the first thing you try is like, oh, can I zoom in and out of the timeline by pinching? That didn't work. So that surprised me a little bit. And then I realized that actually it's not optimized so much for touch operation yet. I mean, you can go left and right here. You can scrub through everything. I mean, this is 4K footage, right?
Yes.
So it's pretty snappy. And you see, this is an iPad Pro with the M2, the top of the line iPad that we bought specifically for this purpose of trying this. But you cannot, can't pinch in. And you see already, it's like, like it wants you to draw rectangles to select stuff. And it feels a little bit like it's ported from desktop, which it is, of course. What do you think?
In general, the iPad version of Resolve does not utilize multi-touch yet. Like anywhere, you cannot really make stuff smaller or larger. There is the cut page, not the edit page. I'm used to working in the edit page mostly. And the cut page has the advantage that you have the whole timeline here, this small stripe. So you can very quickly go to wherever you want to go on the timeline, even if it's a long one.
So the cut page is actually intended to be to make a very fast edit, right? It's not very detailed as the edit page. It's something they introduced, I think, with Resolve 15, 16, something like that. So it's not that old. and you don't have the full edit page on iPad, at least yet. I mean, they promised that they want to actually add most of the functionality, but it's not there yet. Yeah. Okay.
Well, in fact, there are just 2 pages right now on the iPad, and that's the cut page and the color page. So there is no Fairlight, no Fusion, no Deliver page, and no Media page. But you have like a small icons that take some functionality of the Media page. So you have your media right here. Instead of delivery page, for example, you have an export button right here, which right now is very simplified. You don't have many options right here.
And you can't actually do very detailed export settings, right? It's just basically preset stuff. I don't know if you can change that.
I think they're just taking the settings from the project.
Okay.
So you have your project settings, and that's what it will exporting.
Okay.
And you have this in and out section right here. So you can see it here on the timeline, and that's what it will export basically. So you can make it like shorter or longer.
I think you see how small those things are on the screen, even on this large iPad. So it's definitely optimized for the Apple Pencil.
Yes.
Not for touch operation.
You can operate it with your fingers, but it's not going to be as precise as the pencil, of course.
One thing we have to add, what we haven't tried yet is doing a complete round trip of a project. So this project, you started on a desktop and then you ported it to the iPad, which was no problem. We didn't try going back yet, but that should work. I mean, that's one of the big advantages in my opinion, because so far, we've done a long video on LumaFusion a few years ago, and LumaFusion is something that a lot of people were very interested in, which is a iPad-specific editing app, iOS-specific editing app for video editing. But the problem is you don't have the equivalent on the desktop, so you're kind of stuck in one way or another. This is, as far as I know, the first NLE which is available on both desktop and iPads. So of course there are going to be some hiccups, but at least now it's possible, to get started on your iMac. Maybe, you go to are on a flight, you continue the project on your iPad, and then you maybe go to your MacBook when you arrive or something like that. That does make a lot of sense if it's possible. Yeah.
And on top of carrying your footage on an SSD physically to like replug it between the iPad and the iMac or a MacBook, you also have access to network and cloud. So that's like one of the other options. You can save it to the cloud and then work from another device.
That's the new Blackmagic cloud that they announced.
Yeah,
I think at NAB. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We were just working with the local right now, but should be possible to use both options.
I mean, one thing to add, of course, one of the reasons why I think it took manufacturers so long to make an iPad-specific version of something like this is simply because of the annoying way of how Apple deals with file systems. I mean, you don't have an open file system on the iPad or in iOS in general, which of course means you don't have a proper file browser. I mean, now finally there is the Files app, only since, I don't know, one of the more recent iOS updates in the last couple of years. Before that, there was even each app had to have its own microcosm of files, and you couldn't exchange them between them. Now you can, but you have to use an app for that, which is the Files app, but it's not completely open like the Finder, for example. So it's everything is a bit limited. I mean, of course, you only also have one USB port here. Now, at least you can also a relatively recent development, you can at least connect an SSD to that, and it works quite well. I mean, that's how you imported the footage.
Yeah, that's what I worked with.
So that was quite easy. The problem, of course, is, I mean, you can only attach one device, and it will drain your battery because you can't actually power the iPad while you're doing that. So if you want to stay tethered to your outlet. And the funny thing is about attaching an SSD, there's no way to unmount it. So
yes, I actually read up on that because I was quite scared. Like you always just pull it out, but I read that Apple made it so that it's safe. Like when you're copying files, it should always package them in a way when something happens, when it unmounts, then it should be fine. But yeah, it's a bit of a
Yeah, it's a weird feeling to just
It's a
plug
weird
out
feeling,
without, like unmounting a device. But it works quite well, and I think the whole copy process is quite straightforward as well.
Yeah.
All right, what else can you show me in the app itself?
Well, I can show you the how much power the thing has, because as you know, the new iPads with the M1 and M2 chips are incredibly powerful. So I have a clip here with noise reduction on it. Just let me find it. It's this one. It's a 4K timeline. That's from my FPV reel. And you can see here it's H.264. There are mixed H.264 and 265 files from the GoPros.
Cool. So actually something that takes quite a bit of power, processing power.
Much more than ProRes, let's say.
Yeah, I mean, if you use an Intel-based Mac still, you will know the big difference. Especially H.265 files are horrible to play back on Intel-based Macs, and specifically older versions of NLEs. But this looks okay. I mean, it's a bit stuttery, but that's with noise reduction applied, right?
Yeah, that was same on my MacBook, and
yeah.
Yeah, noise reduction is always pushing the processors to the limits.
Yeah.
But if I take one clip, and let's say I copy it and put it on top of another clip, this is without noise reduction, and then let's say you still have the inspector here, like in the full version, right? And then I can reduce opacity so that you see both clips and play it back. It's actually quite fine.
Wow. So no rendering required.
No, there's even a little speed ramp. Seems fine.
Oh, that's impressive.
Yeah, definitely the M2 has enough power to work with most of the stuff that you throw at it.
Well, in essence, it's the same. It's the same chip we have in the MacBooks now, right? So that's the funny thing. I mean, that's the weird thing, the frustrating thing, that you have these very powerful iPads now, but the only way you can really utilize that power would be to play a video game, because there's not so much professional software available yet that can actually tap into the full potential of it. Okay.
I mean, you might get some power, some thermal throttling, because obviously iPad does not have any active cooling. But my MacBook Air also doesn't have any kind of active cooling, so that will be basically the same thing.
Although I don't think that's not such a big issue than it used to be. I mean, there's not as much heat developed as is with the Intel chips. I mean, I still run the last generation of the 16-inch MacBook Pro on Intel, and that's crazy. I mean, it's constantly kicking in the fan, and it just needs a lot of power. And even if it's fully charged, if you do heavy lifting with it, it's probably like 2 hours before it's drained. 2.5 hours. It's crazy. Yeah. So did you also try some grading?
I tried playing with it a little bit. So obviously had the color page. The nice thing is you can play with notes with the touch screen. I find it's a little bit more intuitive to play with the notes and with the wheels, because how I edit, I don't have the speed editor or the editing keyboard with the knobs, so I do everything with mouse. The touch controls of the wheels is kind of more intuitive.
Nice.
I find it's more intuitive.
Yeah.
You can add notes.
I mean, the cool thing is the iPad, of course, has an amazing screen. If you have a screen at this quality as a professional monitor, it's very, very expensive. And a lot of people have been using iPads just as their secondary screen, using Apple software, because it's possible. But now, if you show up with this on a set and maybe do like a speed grade or something like a fast grade and show this to your director, even as a shooter, maybe that's sometimes a good idea. If you're on a larger set and you have an assistant that can help you with that, or DIT, they can load footage onto there, and they can show a speed grade or something right away,
that's
which
true.
is a lot better than having a preview LUT, of course, which is never as accurate.
I would say it's a full color page. Maybe there's some stuff missing, but I didn't find any. You have the trackers here, all the wheels, obviously. You have the parade here. or the vectorscope or waveform or whatever you want to have to monitor your image. And you have the effects here also. I mean, obviously you don't have the Fusion page yet. I think Blackmagic Design will add more and more pages.
I think they already said when they announced this that Fusion will come eventually. That's going to be interesting because I think it's very big in terms of what it can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right now, what I heard is if you have a project with Fusion clips inside, you can still play them back. You cannot edit them right now on the iPad version, but you can still play them back and see how it looks with the effects applied.
Okay, so. Interesting. So the funny thing is, when I look at the interface, it looks like it's the standard desktop version inside a frame, and that frame outside gives some additional buttons in a way that are not there on the desktop app, which kind of make it usable on an iPad, right? Because you don't have a menu bar, of course. It's replacing this with some of those things like the export up there and the clip slots, gallery stuff and all that. So it's basically the desktop version inside a frame, and that makes it operable for the iPad. I mean, it's a good start in my opinion, but I mean, it looks like there's quite a way to go to optimize this fully for touch operation, right? I mean, I wouldn't want to be forced to always use the pencil because, of course, having an iPad, the advantage is being able to do that with your finger. I mean, it does work most of the stuff, but some things just don't, and it's difficult because also, you know, the finger is much bigger than a mouse cursor or the pencil, so you will always be less exact with what you do. But it would be nice to have that capability to use everything, you know, just using touch. Basically.
Yes, in the beginning I was always looking for the top menu because that's where you find lots of stuff. But you find out later that the stuff is there, it's just somewhere else. You need to find it first.
For example?
Yeah, like you have markers, like mark in, mark out. Then I found it's actually here. With the first version, like when you want to move this, the in and out section for rendering, for example, when you want to export something, you can move it, but then when you get to the end, it doesn't go with you, right? So that's maybe a few of the things that can get better with the next version. And in general, maybe they should utilize the multi-touch a little bit more, the pinching to like zoom in and out of the timeline. That would be nice.
There's no multi-touch right now, right? It's a single touch.
As far as I tried stuff, no.
Yeah.
I didn't find any. There was something in the notes that you can, maybe in the notes, but...
you can like zoom in here.
But that's maybe the only thing.
You can, that's weird though, it goes over there, okay.
Yeah, it behaves a bit weirdly.
Yeah.
You have here the
okay, so that functionality we want in the timeline as well, to zoom in and out.
That would be nice, yeah.
The most obvious thing, yeah. Cool, so what's your summary? Is this something you would use? I don't think you have an iPad, but is it something?
I don't. If I would have maybe like something like iPad Air, the smaller one, that I can have something really portable to work with DaVinci. Because as I said, I used my MacBook Air with the M1 version, the first one. I used it to edit on an airplane in economy class, and it was okay. It fit on the small table in front of me. So that's as portable as I can use right now. But for instance, if someone has an iPad and uses it for other work like graphic design, like working, like drawing or painting stuff, and then this person also can use now Resolve, that's nice. That's really cool.
Well, for me, I think a lot of design-related and editing-related things are, or in creative things in general, it's always nice to have interaction with it directly. And in the end, using a computer with a keyboard or a mouse and touchpad is always a very indirect way of doing things. And it kind of, in my opinion, prevents a lot of creativity from happening. You know what I mean? It's like, I really want to be able to touch the images that I'm dealing with. And I really enjoy using, for example, the iOS version of Photoshop because, I mean, there's a lot of photo editing apps in general that are extremely intuitive, and I find it much easier to do post-processing on images on something like the iPad. But what's missing for me here is this is a one-to-one port of the desktop version, and I can't almost, yeah. But it's, of course, it's the first version, so we have to be gentle with them. But still, it's you can't do stuff like that. You can't actually, for example, it would be very obvious to select with a pencil or your finger some colors, right? So if I have a way to select color ranges, maybe that's possible. I don't know, but it doesn't look like I can do anything directly.
I think that's even possible if you pick the tool, right? Like there are magic masks and all these tools. It's there.
Maybe I'm saying something that's absolutely possible.
Yeah, but personally, I'm not a professional colorist, so I don't know all these tools, right? I just use Resolve as an all-in-one solution for my post-production, so it's editing and a little bit of color grading. But from what I saw, there's most of the tools on the color page you can do.
Great.
Right, and of course the touch screen interface and the Apple Pencil makes it a bit more exciting, I would say, than just having a mouse or the touchpad of a MacBook.
Even something like using curves like here, like it's much more intuitive. It's like, exactly, and it actually kind of makes you try it a little bit more, in my opinion. It's something that kind of like motivates you to, I can do this, I can do that, whatever. And then you realize some things that you might not realize, because for me at least, it's something that's just more obvious to do when you do it with your finger or directly on the image. So I think this has great potential. I think if they optimize this even more for touch and multi-touch operation, this can be amazing. And for me, the crucial point, now we are at the time where Apple is finally seems to be bringing together macOS and iOS, which is long overdue in my opinion. And it's only a matter of time until both operating systems will become one for one way or another. So whether we have touch screens on the MacBooks or this becomes, I think they have an intention to make this a professional tool. I mean, it is called iPad Pro, but there is so little professional stuff going on, which is frustrating. But this is the future of editing, and this actually motivates me to do more editing again, because it's very intuitive in the way it works, and the easier it gets, the better it will be.
True, yeah. It's not only the portability, but the feel, the feel how you do stuff with the pencil.
Absolutely. I always found a lot of people are saying that editing, of course, if you use a lot of shortcuts like professional editors, using a touchscreen can be quite inefficient. But I think it's just an interface problem. Like if you fix that interface and if you make some kind of shortcuts available on touchscreens as well, which is possible, it's absolutely something amazing. And like maybe in the future there will be an iPad Pro with 25-inch, and then we will not have a lot of those discussions anymore, because of course you can display everything on there. Well, thank you, Jakub, and let's keep trying. Let's keep monitoring the situation of the of DaVinci Resolve on iPad and where it goes. And we can just encourage everybody to try it themselves. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned to CineD for a lot more, and also please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks.